Another day, another recap. Today we'll be diving into an action thriller crime movie titled Enemy of the State. Without further ado, make sure to sit back, relax, and enjoy the recap. The movie opens up in Occoquan Park, Maryland at 6:45 in the morning. Thomas Reynolds finds Congressman Philip Hammersley playing with his dog and asks to speak. Thomas tells the chairman he doesn't want him to vote for a bill, just release his people and let them do what they want. Mocking the Telecommunication, Security and Privacy Act is something that Philip instead calls the invasion of privacy. He also mentions this bill isn't the first step into surveillance. It is surveillance and will grant the government access to put a camera and microphone up people's asses if they please. When Philip is annoyed and calls the conversation over, Thomas grabs him and makes a very indirect threat. Philip nonetheless walks away to his car only for one of Thomas's agents to knock the congressman out, chuck tons of pills in the car and rolling it down the street into the water below where it sinks and kills the congressman. Elsewhere at Silverberg and Blake Attorneys at Law, Robert Dean, a labor lawyer, enters a room and sees one of his clients telling him that he was jumped by the mafia. The secretary simultaneously walks in the room and is told to send flowers to the other man that ended up in hospital. Robert then tells all men in the room he'll handle the situation and makes his way to a dinner with Rachel Banks to discuss the matter. Rachel is a middleman to a current informant who helps him with high-stakes cases. During their conversation, Robert seeks Rachel's help in obtaining incriminating evidence against a mobster. Rachel agrees but warns him of the dangers involved as she is handed some cash in return. Following his meeting, Robert heads to Pintero's social club and sits with some mafia men including Pintero. Robert presses the man quite hard and shows him a video where he is beside a union official, something his parole terms clearly state he cannot do. Repeatedly saying that is not him in the video, Robert threatens to head down to the federal prosecutor, which gets an immediate reaction and is asked what he wants. Robert says his clients want to vote their contracts up or down as they see fit without any outside influences. Pintero forces Robert to sit down and threatens him by saying while it saves his clients, it for sure does not save him. Pintero wants to know who gave him the tape and plans to kill Robert if he doesn't reveal it. Once Robert is outside, he is told to smile, and the FBI simultaneously snatch a photo of him and quickly start looking into who he is. Back at Occoquan Park, emergency services pull the Republican congressman's car from the water as reporters speak on the tragedy and how the congressman was opposing a bill to be passed. An agent there then watches how a man from the other side of the road opens up a box and takes out a camera and tape before putting in a new one and getting back to his car. The agent seems to be frightened at this and calls someone up with the license plate of the vehicle. At the National Security Agency, Hicks runs through the place and arrives at Thomas's office and alerts him that a nature photographer named Daniel had a motion-activated camera with compound lens watching the lake and was aimed at where they killed the congressman. Thomas wants to hire some ex-military cutouts and plans his way to rectify the situation. He wants a wire immediately on his birdwatcher, and at the Kent Island Intercept Station, Fiedler is called, and it seems is also part of the bogus operation. David Pratt, on the other hand, hires some ex-military cutouts and the operation begins. The birdwatcher, meanwhile, goes through his footage when he sees a reporter speaking on the death of the congressman and how he was alone. Daniel then discovers that the congressman was knocked out and killed. He smiles at the gold mine he just acquired and calls his friend Lenny to say he has the congressman's murder on tape and has the culprit. Hicks and Fiedler listen to this conversation and immediately call Thomas to alert him that Daniel is making a copy to give to his friend. Thomas wants a dedicated satellite for the operation, and the team immediately make their way to Daniel's apartment where they try to get a woman to open the door without causing a scene. Daniel knows exactly what's up and finds out that all his phones are disconnected. While the team goes to break the door open, the tape is copied. Daniel hides it in a device and goes out the back door but is spotted. Making his way on the roof, the satellite visual comes on and gets a live feed of Daniel jumping rooftops. With a chopper, van, satellite, and multiple men after him, Daniel runs for dear life as he knows he is dead if they catch him. Running through a barber shop and locking the door behind himself, the men still give chase through an alley. Coincidentally, Daniel runs into Robert, who recognizes him. Daniel then takes Robert's card and hides the camera footage in his bag before continuing his escape by stealing a bike. However, the cars around him make it difficult to use the bike properly, and problematically tries going into another lane only to get crushed by a truck. The men immediately go to search the lifeless body, only to find Robert's business card as Robert watches the tragedy from afar. In Georgetown, Robert arrives at his house while his son Eric plays a game with his friend Dylan. Telling his son to not touch his presents until he says so, he goes to see his wife Carla screaming at the TV saying there is no more freedom in America and the government is ending personal privacy. Robert treats this like a joke and is told he is treading too lightly around this topic. Making his daily cocktail, Robert tells his wife about his old friend Daniel getting hit by a fire truck today, and with that, Robert goes upstairs while Thomas is told they found the original tape, but they believe a copy was made. He also mentions that Robert's card was found on the scene and Thomas wants everything there is to know about Robert. Fiedler gets straight to it and runs a comprehensive database search. They discover he's been in contact with Rachel Banks, who is known to them. They match cash outs and deposits between the two and know they went to university together and have a past. They then use some state-of-the-art technology to notice that something was put into Robert's bag without his know-how. With this item most likely being the copied file, Thomas wants men at the house immediately. Back with Robert, the dog knocks over some wine while both David and his corrupt man ask him to come in. With two guys in the van outside monitoring everything and Thomas at home base with his team listening in, Robert tells the men to f*** off if they don't have a warrant. Throwing Rachel Banks' name in the picture, he kicks them out. Immediately heading upstairs, he goes through both bags and discovers nothing just as his wife arrives. The following day, Thomas's team come to the conclusion that Robert most likely has the tape but doesn't know he has it. Thomas then informs the room that credibility is the only thing that will level the playing field and wants Robert's name and career dragged into the mud by any means necessary. While Robert and his family go for a drive that night, David and his men break into their house and install cameras, bugs, and audio all over the place, including inside Robert's clothes and shoes. They graffiti the place and trash everything to make it look like kids done it all. When the family arrives home soon later, they discover the house ransacked and Robert immediately calls the cops and alerts them to the situation. They tell him they will be conducting an investigation, and everything will go back to normal. The next morning, the same goons go to Robert's locker while he is canoeing and replace his watch, phone as well as his pen, placing trackers on them. Robert heads back to the locker and puts on all his items before heading to work. Unaware there has been a news article released on an FBI investigation on him, he gets told off by all ends and is told the bosses want to speak to him. Rachel simultaneously calls him and says her firm fired her because she has a relationship with him and his ties with the mob. Going in to see the two big bosses, it seems a grand jury is being convened to look into his labor practice, claiming he helped create a shell company which allowed the mob to exert influence and provide false witnesses to discredit their case. Robert denies it all, and when they mention Rachel Banks, he completely loses control and tells them off. They say to him to take a leave of absence and is pretty much fired. Once Robert gets home, his wife has also read the paper and begins to swear at him. As much as he tries to defend himself and his loyalty to her, he is not listened to and told to get out of his own home. The corrupt agents outside watch this and laugh at how well their plan worked. With that, Robert directly heads down to sleep in a hotel for the night, only to discover his bank accounts are frozen. While driving soon after, he is being traced as he attempts to call Rachel and give her a meeting point. That night, the entire team make a plan to listen in and be ready for anything that might be discussed during tomorrow's meeting. Meanwhile, at Pintero's limousine service, Robert tells the right-hand man he wants to speak to Pintero, who he thinks done all of this to him. However, he is not allowed to talk to the boss and is told to beat it. At the meeting with Rachel the next day, surveillance teams listen in and multiple sources listen to every word spoken. Robert tells Rachel he wants to meet with her contact Brill. The surveillance team picks up the name and goes looking for it while Rachel refuses to help. However, she ends up changing her mind, seeing that her life is destroyed. She enlightens him on how she contacts Brill, and fortunately enough, the surveillance lose audio and only have the trackers online. Rachel then explains how she contacts Brill through a message on the post box to immediately go on a ferry at 3 p.m. and drop the package off on a specific seat. While Robert completes all the steps, he goes to the bathroom where a man approaches him and says his name is Brill and uses a bug sweeper to tell Robert to remove his shoe. After removing the bug and flashing it down the toilet, Brill tells him to jump in the back of his cab. Interrogating him, Brill immediately questions why the government is after him. Suspecting that he must have something they want, government agents approach from behind and Brill screams at Robert to come clean. Robert swears on everything he knows that he has no idea when suddenly Brill jumps on the radio, which confuses Robert. After a man jumps in the way of the taxi, they are clocked from behind and in front. Brill then pulls a gun on Robert, who diverts the bullet before making a run for it and escaping. Going into a hotel, the trackers are all still active when Robert calls his upset wife, who has today's photo of him and Rachel. Suddenly, Robert notices the actual Brill, who calls him and forcefully moves him onto an elevator. After stopping it, he chucks Robert on the floor and begins searching him. Finding bug after bug, he removes them all, but 3 still remain. He tells Robert he is a moron and should not have come searching for him. Taking him to the rooftop, he assures Robert the mob is too dumb to be conducting an operation like this. While the NSA make their way into the hotel, Brill makes Robert understand he is being targeted by the NSA and has more bugs on himself and to dump his watch. Threatening that if he comes next to him or Rachel again that he'll kill him, he escapes as the chopper arrives on the scene. Dumping his watch and only having 1 bug left on him, Robert sprints down the stairwell and acts like a hotel worker to make his way into a room just as the agents walk past him. However, they quickly use the bug detector to find the room he's hiding in. Knowing he is about to get caught, Robert changes his clothes and exits from the window just as the agents barge in. Walking on the balcony, he goes a couple stories down until the agents notice him and get a chopper to watch him get to level 15. The men then grab Robert's clothes and sprint for him as he attempts to escape and decides to lock himself in a storage room. Knowing there is no way out, he makes a fire and raises it to the alarm. Accidentally causing a bigger than expected fire, the entire building is evacuated. The fire team quickly make their way inside and break down the storage door to rescue Robert. transporting him to the nearest hospital. Robert steals the cop's gun and forces them to stop the ambulance in the middle of the road. He sprints directly into a tunnel where he has multiple cars chasing him. Tunnel Control are then alerted to the situation and told their perp is in Tunnel 6. Using the wrong lane as cover, Robert heads inside a door. Tunnel Control tells them he's heading into another tunnel and all agents quickly divert. Once Robert gets there, he starts jogging but stops when he realizes he's been caught. However, he causes a minor accident to make his way to a tunnel on top of him and with perfect timing gives himself some leeway as the agents get stuck. He then finds a man washing his truck and aims his gun at him. While the agents quickly approach and arrest him, they realize they've been duped and Robert has made a clean getaway. The following morning, the NSA agents watch Carla and the house cleaner when Carla comes outside to her dog barking. Going into the garage, Robert pulls her to the side and explains that the house is bugged and that he is loyal to only her. Finally believing him, he explains that he wants her to go to Philly for a couple days, but she refuses. However, a quick yelling session compels her to agree. Robert then realizes that the same night he brought the gifts home was the same night he was ransacked, and that was no coincidence. He then devises a plan for the nanny to drive and pick the kids up from school, and everything seems not to raise suspicion at the surveillance team nearby. Robert instructs the nanny to grab his son and his friend before they arrive at school, and that's exactly what she does. Once on the road, Robert speaks to Eric and forces him to face forward and do not look at him. He then tells his son to tell the truth and he will not get in trouble. He asks him if he opened the gifts he got without his permission. Eric says the toy was already opened in the bag and he just took it, but it doesn't work anyways. Robert asks for it and Eric passes it through the side to him. With that, Robert jumps straight on a payphone and alerts the police to some hooligans hanging outside his mother's house, and this immediately causes the surveillance team to get lost. Robert quickly heads to Rachel's apartment and discovers the door already unlocked. Puzzled, he goes inside only to see the horrific tragedy of his dear friend dead on the ground. Obviously killed by Thomas and his corrupt team of lunatics, Robert is deeply saddened and angered by this development. Finding his cufflinks on the floor as well as his clothes, he sees a picture of young Rachel with Brill and gets emotional. Making his way to port, he acts like a homeless man and proceeds to Brill's car only to force his way inside. Brill is not happy to see him but drives until he is told Rachel is dead. He stops the car and tells Robert,
"Get out of the car."
He drives away but stops and knows there is no point in running away now. Once handed the toy, Brill says the NSA is trying to frame Robert to discredit him if he goes public. The NSA meanwhile go through the satellite feed from earlier and notice Brill never looked up once. Brill and Robert simultaneously arrive at a gas station to buy a snack when Robert stupidly uses a payphone nearby to call Carla's friend and tells her to tell his wife that he did not kill Rachel. Fiedler quickly tracks this and sends David and his men to retrieve the surveillance tapes. This gets them a perfect image of Brill, to which they search their database while Brill and Robert arrive at an industrial complex in South Baltimore. Parking up the vehicle, the duo arrive at Brill's headquarters, a place that Brill secured himself for the last 15 years. Problematically, the NSA uses satellite imagery to locate what car the duo are driving and the exact destination they stopped at. Later that day, Brill explains how no frequencies can come in and out of the building. Placing the tape Robert found earlier, the two go to have a look as the NSA once again locate their prey. Inside, Brill confesses he used to work for the NSA and gives Robert a rundown of his life but shuts up when he discovers that the congressman was killed by the special advisor to the deputy director of operations. Simultaneously, the duo are alerted to a breach downstairs and Robert is handed the file and told he is a moron for using the phone when they stopped at a gas station. Nonetheless, Robert grabs the cat and the duo watch the cameras, which allows them to sneak to their car. The agents notice a bomb about to detonate though and run for their lives. Robert places the kitten inside a bag and the two speed away but are chased and shot at. The industrial building then goes off in a massive explosion, destroying the building. However, their pursuers haven't given up yet and attempt to ram the duo and force them to stop. Their car catches flames instead though, and Robert lets off a shot to flip the enemy vehicle over and stop their chasers in their tracks. The fire, problematically though, gets into the car and they are forced to stop and discover that the file burnt alongside Robert's jacket. A chopper joins the chase and the car blows up as the two run for their lives. Smartly enough, both men run through mud and barely make it past an approaching train, forcing their pursuers to stop. Brill then loses the plot, swearing at how his life is ruined and Rachel is dead because of Robert, who aims the shotty at him and says all they have is each other. Putting down the gun, both of them go to hijack a car.
Get out!
This causes the chopper to lose them, and they have survived yet another ordeal when Hicks discovers Brill's identity to be Edward Lyle, a former NSA agent that vanished 15 years ago. Thomas says this is a real big problem, while Edward in the meantime tells the story of how the agency was corrupt and that his former partner who died was Rachel's father, which is why he was so upset at losing her. Robert nonetheless refuses to go into hiding and wants to take the fight to them. The duo begin making a plan, but not before retrieving the items they stole from the NSA. They then make their way to a hardware store to get some more items. The next day, Edward devises a plan to plant the NSA bugs at Congressman Sam Albert's home. the main frontrunner to the surveillance bill he wants. After hacking the congressman's phone, they follow this by breaking into his hotel and installing audio, bugs, and everything they had done to Robert. That night, they get proper imagery of the congressman who, let's just say, isn't as loyal as everyone thinks. Later, seeing the TV isn't working, multiple agents quickly bug sweep the hotel and discover the NSA bugs all over the place. Edward and Robert's next target is Thomas's house. Faking to be electricians, they go inside, and later on, Thomas sits with his daughter when he suddenly sees a camera of his house on his own TV. Taking the device to Fiedler, they know Edwards and Robert is to blame. Thomas's wife then alerts her husband to an extra $140,000 in her account when he is told that Admiral Schaefer wants to see all department heads. Thomas's wife then tells him off for roses a woman sent him. The next morning, Admiral Schaefer wants to know how the hell one of their bugs was found in the congressman's hotel room. He wants to know who checked it out, who authorized the operation. And if he doesn't get answers soon, people are going to start getting locked up. Once the meeting is concluded, Thomas gets a call from Edward. They make a meeting point and Edwards wants to get a confession out of Thomas. He plans on giving Robert a signal to activate his mic once the NSA stops sweeping him. Another problem though, Robert will be swarmed in about 5 minutes and must leave in 4 minutes no matter what. The scene then cuts to the meeting time as Thomas arrives. Edwards arrives in a cop uniform, which surprises Thomas. David then uses his bug sweeper and finds nothing. Robert activates the mic and starts the timer. Edwards simultaneously tells Thomas he'll trade the tape for $1.8 million, the amount he would have earned for the last 15 years had he not been on the run. Thomas accepts the deal if he gets Robert as well. Edward uses this topic to try and get Thomas to admit to killing Rachel, but he is too smart with his words. As the watch approaches 4 minutes, Edwards radios him and says it's a trap. Just then he is knocked out, and while Edwards runs for it, he is held at gunpoint and forced into a car. Thomas gets a call by his wife who says all their accounts are frozen, and Robert laughs at him just as Edwards is thrown into the van. Quite disappointed, Robert didn't run. For some reason, Fiedler starts to record the conversation in the van as Edwards screams Thomas is a pathetic murderer. This results in a bullet in his hand. After aiming the gun to Edwards' head, Robert says the address of where the tape is. Edwards is not happy though, as it was their only leverage. Funnily enough, the van arrives at Pintero's social club. As all agents make their way out of the car, the FBI see this and search the plates as Robert makes a deal with Thomas saying that they'll go in together and sign off. Once he and Edwards are released, Thomas will get the tape. Agreeing to the deal, the FBI instantaneously realize the car is a government vehicle. Robert gives Edwards a wink before he goes inside Pintero's club. Pintero is immediately alerted of Robert's arrival and he shows him in. Robert lies and says Thomas is the man he wanted to meet, the person who Pintero thinks made his tape. Robert continues by saying he wants his tape back, and Pintero laughs as both men don't realize they're speaking about different tapes. Edwards suddenly begins to almost throw up, and Hicks takes him outside where the FBI see the blood on his hand and the cop badge. Back inside, Pintero and Thomas both arc up to each other until Thomas is pushed and guns are drawn from all directions. Pintero realizes the men inside are government agents and tells them to get a warrant or get lost. Edwards, smartly enough though, panics all remaining men to go inside while the FBI wait for backup. With the rest of the men walking in with guns on the ready, one agent startles everyone enough to cause everyone to fire their bullets continuously until every single person in the club is killed. FBI simultaneously arrive to save Robert's ass and call him one of theirs. Edward smiles as they have finally won. He walks out of the surveillance van and away as if nothing ever happened, but it seems that Fiedler has survived the ordeal. At FBI headquarters later, Fiedler and another agent are questioned and asked why they recorded the conversation inside the van. Fiedler lies and says he was there for technical support and didn't know what was happening. Congressman Sam Albert then announces he will no longer be supporting the bill, and it is dead for now. Robert is also cleared of all charges, and finally, after all the hardship he has been through, gets to spend some time with his family. While watching the TV, it bugs out to see a camera in his house facing at him. Laughing as he knows it is Edward, the movie comes to an end, and that's all for now. Make sure to drop a like and comment if you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you on the next one.